when nerdy Spencer discovers Jumanji the video game, him and a group of misfits from high school stuck in detention get dragged into the incredible world of Jumanji. This film almost sounds like a studio executive's wet dream. It's basically an attempt at soft rebooting a really well-liked film from about 20 years ago, so right on the nostalgia threshold, and basically saying, hey, aren't kids obsessed with social media and video games nowadays? What if we made it about that? And it had Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart in it. It's basically like the most commissionable bad idea for a movie, which is why I was shocked that I thought it wasn't completely awful. Now don't get me wrong, everything that I thought would be bad is bad in this film. It's pretty much one of the most ham-fisted attempts at updating something that I can kind of think of. Right at the start of the movie, this guy picks up the Jumanji board game and goes, board games, nobody plays those anymore. I'm all about video games, and he starts playing a video game because he's a teenager and they only care about video games. And then we cut to the modern day and we meet a teenage girl who's like too busy playing with her phone and doing selfies because that's all that teenage girls do. Yeah, you kind of end up with this quite hollow, stereotypical set of characters right at the start of the film. You've got this generic nerdy lead kid who's probably a stand-in for one of the screenwriters and how he felt as a teenager. And then you've got this big athlete, kind of like bit of a jerk, but probably has a heart of gold there somewhere because he used to be childhood friends with the nerdy kid who might be a stand-in for the screenwriter. And then you have this quiet, shy, pretty nerdy girl who's kind of intellectually feisty and clever, and you're like, okay, so this is like the girl that the screenwriter wanted to date when he was in high school, maybe. And then there's this like selfish, selfie-obsessed Instagram diva character who is, I think, what every American exec in his middle age thinks is wrong with his daughters, I suppose. You kind of know she's going to get short shrift in the characterization department when she actually video calls somebody in the middle of a class to ask them whether or not they think their social media posting is right for the boy that they're dating. Honestly, when I see these characters, it's not like these people have ever met teenagers, you know? Like I think about a film like Wonder, which came out a couple of weeks ago, and how realistic it was in terms of looking at teenagers who, you know, have changed in terms of the technology they have access to, but haven't become monsters just because Facebook exists. And I will say it's not much better for the nerdy girl either. At one point she says to the pretty girl, whose name is Bethany, I think. She's like, are you gonna help or are you too pretty? Like, who says that? I really don't believe lines like that. So all that real world stuff just feels really stupid and kind of ham-fisted, and it really doesn't work. Luckily, once they get inside the game, the film starts to really pick up pace, and we get really good chemistry from, obviously, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is just an absolute gift of charisma for this sort of dumb shit. Kevin Hart, I've not seen in many films before, but he was very, very, very funny in this film. My girlfriend was like laugh out loud a lot of the times in the movie. Karen Gillan is... I really liked her in Doctor Who. I just don't think she has that much range, but luckily she is in her range in this film, and I think she does a good job of it. And then Jack Black is hysterical. He's really funny. He plays basically a 16-year-old girl in a middle-aged, chubby dude's body. And he nails it. It's a really funny performance. And it's good that their chemistry works because the film's action kind of falls flat a lot of the time. There's something about the directing which is, I think, just like perfectly adequate and often just not that interesting, especially when it comes to showing actual physical stunts. It's almost like reminiscent of Xena Warrior Princess or something, which is directed just fine, but obviously doesn't really have any budget. And this film obviously does have budget and somehow just doesn't show it on screen with stuff like that. And unfortunately, the rest of the set pieces are predominantly CGI focused, with big CGI animals kind of stampeding around and stuff, which means they don't really have any weight to them as sequences. I think the other issue as well is that the action in the film is always going to fall flat, especially if you compare it to the original Jumanji movie. The thing about the original Jumanji is that it's set in our world, and the world of Jumanji is coming over to us. So you get this sort of slightly anarchic, fun appeal that I think works really well for kids, which is seeing a house get decimated by this board game and watching these like CGI monkeys run rampant in the city and stuff. You don't get any of that in this because it's set in Jumanji, not in the real world, and so there's not that contrast there. And that also means that the stakes of these sequences feel comparatively a lot lower, even if they aren't technically any lower than they were in the first film. I think to its credit, the creative team on this film realizes that, and to an extent changes the focus of the film from being a kind of action film with some kind of spooky bits and some laughs to being pretty much a comedy that has some action trappings. I think that's a change that's mostly for the better because it avoids slightly unflattering comparisons with the original film. The other plus of having the film mostly focus on these Avatar characters is that they are better actors, the adults, than the kids are. And I don't mean any offense to those kids. Alex Wolff, I've seen him in other stuff, and I think he's a funny, cool kid. I think he's a good actor. But I just don't think that they're as good in terms of their chemistry or in terms of how they carry the character stories. And that's the other thing for this movie that kind of elevated it for me from being kind of forgettable and not that great was the characterization, which felt very honest and sort of authentic. For as much as those kid characters are really hollow and stereotypical at the start, the character arcs that they go through are actually quite nuanced and compelling. And that's not something that's particularly like innovative, I would say. They're all quite staid character arcs, but they are told with a certain sort of emotional honesty that makes them help the film just tick along. So is the film good? Not in a hugely traditional sense. Is it dumb? Absolutely. Does it do a lot of things wrong? Yes. But somehow it won me over ever so slightly. So I wouldn't recommend going to see this in the cinema, but I think it is worth keeping an eye out for streaming services and TV. I hope you found it as funny as much as my girlfriend did, because she wouldn't stop laughing the whole way through, because she wants to seem really intellectual and cool, but...
Get on my back! Nope, I'm gonna die. Put me down!
Do you like Jumanji? Welcome to the jungle. And hey, a little shout out to Sony for feeling so insecure about most of their products that they feel the need to insert them into every film that they make. Because in this film we get a scene where Spencer is typing away on his Sony computer, and then he moves over to his Sony PlayStation 4, and then we cut to Bethany with her Sony Xperia phone. I walked out of this really jonesing for some of those Sony noise cancelling headphones, guys. Let me know if you saw the movie. I'd love to find out what you thought of it in the comments down below. And don't forget to click the like button if you enjoyed this video. Also, you can, if you chose to, click the subscribe button in order to make sure you get the next review when it comes out. But that's it from me for now. Have a good one. See you next time.